We're not late. We're not late.
201.
We're on time, motherfuckers. Welcome to Heretical Weekends number 39. Right?
Sure.
Sure. We're going with that.
This is Heretical Weekends. I can verify that 100%.
Last time I did that, I got the fucking number wrong, and so I had to go back and be like, ah, shit. So number 39. Here we are once again. Thank you everyone for joining us today. As always, I got Turtle 2080 and Run Gava Guy Run. How you doing, guys?
Great.
Good.
How are things in your part of the country?
Good. I got a cat on my lap. She's purring.
Nice. Who doesn't want a pussy on their lap? You know what I mean? Like sometimes you just makes the day go by. And as always, fuck Arcane Logos because he's an asshole. And not only that, but Gava Guy was giving us a a very candid opinion on his interaction with Darwin's deity and Matt Bell. I'm not sure he'll get into it though. Will you get into it? All right.
Well,
First,
you're forcing him to.
right. That's the only way to get him to do it.
On the spot.
On the show today, before we get into all that shenanigans, we got a fucked up Bible story by Run Gava Guy Run. We got the aftermath of the Jesus camp and where some of these kids, where are they now? And, did they end up in the church? Did they get out of the church? This and that. And if we have time, I think Gava Guy saw Christian Mingle, but I don't think we're going to get into that today because I didn't finish it. And that makes me a bad host. I couldn't get through that fucking movie. I couldn't do it.
How far did you get?
14 minutes.
I was going to joke and say 10 minutes, but wow.
14 minutes, and I contemplated slitting my wrist at least 3 times. It was bad.
Yeah, well then you better stop and take a break.
To the knock-knock joke.
Oh, dude, I got to the part where they were in the coffee shop and she tried to pray over the coffee. I'm just fucking, I'm out. I can't do it. So, anyway, I had a little bit of an interesting interaction online this week. But Gabby, I want you to channel your inner fucking anger, or whatever. pretend we're not online anymore, and just tell us what happened on your offline hangout.
Yeah, well, it was what's his name? MK's hangout last night that he did, and it was off air. And at the beginning of the hangout, Darwin's deity was in the hangout, and he was freaking out at MK for not moderating, and he kept muting everybody in the hangout because they were talking over him. Well, he was dominating the whole conversation and couldn't stand that anybody else was trying to get a word in edgewise, and he was misrepresenting what people had said and things. So he eventually, imagine that. And then towards the end of the hangout, Matt Bell joined, and he was doing his thing. And to me, it was amazing how two of those guys are, and they can't stand each other either, from what I gather. I don't think that they can be in the same room together, because Matt Bell can't really be in the room with anybody but himself.
Now, not to interrupt you, but you used a very specific word to describe these two gentlemen.
They're dicks.
They're dicks. Yes.
They are. Yes.
And one acts like one, and one's face is shaped like one. So it's.
Yeah, there's that too. But yeah.
Who would go? I think you're actually the fucking crazy one, and here's why. Now, it's one thing to go into a live on-air hangout where you can, discuss the stuff, and but you went to an off-air hangout. That's like going to the dude's house or something and just like, hey man, let's have a chat. Like, what did you hope to accomplish by doing that? Was it just
it's a real conversation? And to some extent, when you have these off-air things, it's not, you don't get the kind of antics.
Showmanship.
I think that's because it's not there, it's not recorded, and I think people let their guards down a little bit because it's not being broadcast to the world. But
nothing much changes though, right? Darwin's deity is still an asshole, and Matt Bell still looks like an uncircumcised penis. So nothing much has changed, right? I mean, it's pretty much exactly the same.
Yeah, but those two weren't. I mean, I was in there for maybe an hour and a half, and I would say each of them probably sucked away maybe 15 minutes a piece. So half an hour of those two,
Right.
and then an hour of conversation with other people that were actually engaging, and we had some interesting discussion. Veckel was in there, a guy named Alvin that I've not interacted with before, and I like Veckel. I can have a conversation with him. I think he's a bit mental, and we, per usual, he ended up defending slavery again, and
See,
so.
Did I tell you guys my definition of Veckel and G-Man? I think I did like a long time ago. You probably don't remember, but this was back more when Veckel and G-Man were like butt buddies. But I couldn't figure out if Veckel was a slightly smarter G-Man or if G-Man was a slightly dumber Veckel. Like I don't know. Like I couldn't quite tell. It was a weird dichotomy.
G-Man is so much dumber.
He's a dumber Veckel. Is that what you're saying?
Well, there's no slightly about it. I don't.
Yeah.
He's retarded. We all know that. But I had an interesting interaction with some dude named Moses Prey, and I'm actually going to link him in the description because what had happened was every once in a while those atheism group discussions pop up on my feed, right?
Yeah.
And I'll comment on them every now and then, but I generally don't because it's a discussion thread. Like everyone that's a member automatically it's all bling, and I get like a billion, those. So this guy started posting up a bunch of basically anti-science stuff, like anti-evolution stuff, and the one I commented on was he posted this blurb about Piltdown Man and how it was a hoax, and it's like, but why would atheists want to do that? And da, 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 and it's like, dude, evolution does not equal atheism, and then everyone's going through it, and we have this sort of interaction going on where I have pretty much lost patience with the crazy people, right? Like if someone wants to have like a conversation, that's cool, but the fucking crazy people, I'm like, hey, look, dude, do you want to do a hangout? I mean, I call me the new Trey Jadlow, but I'm like, I'm sick of your bullshit. You want to back it up? We can, because what ends up happening is like they completely misrepresent your point in text. You know what I mean? Or they ignore it, and it's like, answer my question, and then they blurb on something else, and you're like, no, you're dodging my question. Now, if I have them in a hangout, I can go answer the fucking question. You know what I mean? So,
right.
So then he goes. He gets banned from that because he had posted several things in that discussion, and it's obvious he was there just to be crazy and start shit. So he goes on to like one of our past videos that we did like last week's or whatever, a couple weeks ago, and says, I would love to do a hangout. They banned me from the discussion thread, blah 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 blah. And we go, and I said, well, you were kind of creating some drama and all that, shit like that. And and then we start getting into, well, can't science be questioned? And I'm just like, dude, there's a big difference between questioning, this scientific method or discovery or whatever, and being a jackass. But anyway, so we agreed to do it today, right? And then someone else came in and started interacting with him, and then he started blurbing about like how Darwinism kills 4,000 babies a day, and it was part of the Third Reich, and this and that. And I jump back in the discussion, and I'm like, whoa. I hope you're starting to concern me here because you sound like a bit of a conspiracy nut. I hope we have a more fruitful conversation, in our hangout. Now, I was skeptical of this guy, like actually going into a hangout with me. Just by the way his antics were. So then his response is, I'm gonna cancel our little hangout. You can wait till I start my new channel. Blah 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 blah. And then like he totally canceled the whole thing and backed out.
Yeah, I saw that because I was getting notifications every time you would respond.
Right.
Oh, seriously? Oh, and it was even weird because he was like, it has to be moderated, and I'm like, why is there a moderator? Then he goes, oh no, I mean not a moderator, but it has to be, can it be non-recorded? And I'm just like, what the fuck's the point of that? And then he's like, well, okay, but it has to be on my channel, and I'm just like, dude, I'm all chill the fuck out. If you look at the rest of my videos, but when I talk to other people, I'm not a mutant boot kind of guy unless your name is Matt Bell. So it's like just chill out, homie. It's all good. But he backed out. But I had a feeling he was going to anyway, and that's about the extent of that. I haven't heard from him since. So
Yeah, I thought about jumping in when he started talking about 4,000, like Darwinism kills 4,000 babies every day or something like that, and it's just like, yeah, and so does Newtonianism and Einsteinism. Yeah, that all of these philosophies lead to murder.
So yeah, he's a weird dude, and I mean, it would have been entertaining to talk to him, but I'm not sure how much of a conversation we could have had. But that's neither here nor there. That's the update, and you should have jumped in.
It's funny. It's funny that he's like, wait until I set up my channel. Like, what is he going out and building a channel? I mean, how long does it take to? It takes like a click. You start a Hangout and you've got a channel.
Right. Well, he's obviously. I had a feeling he may be insane. Just a hunch.
Just wait until I click this button.
Right. Like, when someone has just not gone off the meds, just a skosh, you just like, you've gone to a place you don't want to be. So,
see, I don't know, and maybe this is a good segue, but I don't know that he's insane. Obviously, I didn't have as much interaction or see as much interaction as you actually had with him, but I suspect that he's just very indoctrinated. And like I said, maybe this is a good transition into Jesus Camp, but what were you going to say? Nice
segue. It's our segue expert. All right, Jesus Camp. Let's talk about it. Gabby, I'm pickleballing this into your court, dude.
Hey, this wasn't mine. This was Turtle's topic.
Why don't you
was it Turtles?
Oh, yeah. Why don't you start with the trailer for? Well, I guess I'll as
I can do it.
You can prep the trailer. I'll just kind of give a quick little explanation of what Jesus Camp is for those who don't know what it is. But Jesus Camp was a 2006 documentary that followed several children and like a children's minister for evangelical / Pentecostal from a evangelical / Pentecostal church. I don't remember where. It's been a long time since I've seen it. But and these kids go to a Christian camp, and the documentary kind of follows what that process is like. And here we're gonna watch the trailer from Jesus Camp.
Let's go back in time to 2006.
We're not getting audio. Are you getting audio, Gabby?
No. Also, Heathen, white box your profile picture there.
Heathen, you muted yourself.
Oh, it mutes me automatically. I got it. Okay. Let's try this again.
This is a sick old world. Kids, you gotta change things. Boys and girls can change the world? Absolutely. There are two kinds of people in the world. People who love Jesus and people who don't. Where should we be putting our focus? I'll tell you where our enemies are putting it. They're putting it on the kids. How old have you been a Christian?
At 5, I got saved.
Yeah.
So I just wanted more.
If you go in Palestine, they're taking their kids to camps like we take our kids to Bible camps, and they're putting hand grenades in their hands.
There's an excitement. Yeah, there's a peace with it all, too. It's really cool. I really feel that we're a key generation to Jesus coming back. And we are a generation that needs to rise up and run with that baton.
How many want to be those who would give up their lives for Jesus?
We're being trained to do God's honor.
You are the beginnings of a movement. Raise a righteous judgment. There's a new church like this every 2 days in America. 25% of the American population. That's about 80 million people. If the evangelicals vote, they determine the election. They've taken over the White House, Congress, the judiciary for a generation. This is the tip of the iceberg. Are you a part of it or not?
Is anybody else frightened to their very core?
Well, here's the thing: is that Gavagai and I actually grew up going to evangelical Pentecostal church, so we
went to camp.
And we went to camp. So this kind of thing is not that foreign to either of us.
Not shocking. No, we didn't have.
It was not like I would say the difference for us is that it wasn't that extreme for one thing, and it also the more extreme kind of emotional guilt part was more aimed at teens as opposed to
Elementary
children.
school
Yeah,
age.
elementary school age children. But that being said, I mean, like I said, this is familiar territory to the two of us.
That's wow. Well, that's yeah. I don't know what to say to that. Good night, everybody.
So I guess we're success stories, so let's get into why we're talking about Jesus Camp today. And this article is from last month, I believe, but I just ran across it about a week. What's that?
Or am I?
You can screen share it, I guess. I don't think we need to screen share it necessarily, but you can. Yeah. So this article is from about a month ago, posted on The Guardian, and basically it kind of recaps where a few of the players from the documentary are in their lives now. And you saw him very briefly in the trailer there, but the one kid, he's got kind of longer blondish hair. His name is Andrew Summercamp, and if you're familiar with the documentary, there's a very kind of powerful, emotional part in the documentary that, as atheists, I think really speaks to us, where he's saying, and this is from, they quote it in the article here, but he says in the documentary, and you have to keep in mind they're in the Jesus Camp, and this is during, like, presumably after a sermon or whatever, and they're having all these kids, and it's very emotional, and they're basically asking all these kids like what their sins are and what they feel bad about, basically, not in those words, but they have some of the kids get the microphone at different points in time and kind of like talk about like what they want to do for Jesus, or what they're thinking about for Jesus, or those kinds of things. And this kid, Andrew Summercamp, at one point has the microphone, and he says, "I just want to talk about belief in God. I've been having a hard time with it. To believe in God is hard because you don't see Him. You don't know Him much. Sometimes I don't even believe what the Bible says. It makes me a faker. It makes me feel guilty and bad." And that's, to me, such an impressive thing for a child to say in this scenario, to basically say sometimes he doesn't believe and doesn't know what to think about this whole thing. But anyway, so this is that kid. So if you're familiar with the documentary and you remember that moment, this is the person we're talking about. So and we're, like we said earlier, this is from 2000. The documentary was filmed in 2006. It's 2016 now, so this is 10 years later. And apparently, this Andrews summer camp, which is I don't know, is that an ironic name or the opposite of ironic? Um, but
Coincidental?
coincidental, yeah,
It's
I don't know.
spelled SOMMERKAMP.
Yeah, but
Now, not for nothing though, but the kid that was questioning, this guy, could they have found a worse picture of him? You know what I mean? Like he looks like a fucking homeless person, like or one of those beach
well,
dudes. Like,
but if you look there, it says photograph courtesy of Andrew Summercamp. So that's the
Yeah.
picture he gave
yeah,
to them.
I know. No, that's true. That's a
That's
good
his.
point.
That's his, in his opinion, best representation of himself. Um,
Well, he's getting swiped right. That's all I can say.
so, and then this from the article here, they say his split from evangelical world happened when his father came out as gay. So he is no longer evangelical. I don't think he's a Christian anymore. It specifically says evangelical Christianity. So, but then it continues and says he spent several years angry at the church, but he has since discovered peace in Eastern mysticism, quantum mechanics, and psychotropic drugs. So that doesn't sound like any kind of Christianity, but there's all kinds of flavors. So on the one hand, I'm glad that he's gotten out of that, but I wish he had landed in a little better place. But he's young. He's probably in his 20s. He's got to be in his 20s.
Yeah.
But early 20s. But he's young. He's got time to figure stuff out. But and then a quote that he had, and this is not, in 2016, talking about his experience. He says, "Was it child abuse? Yes and no. I think they had the best of intentions, but I see it as sick people trying to treat sick people. It's their coping mechanism for figuring out why we're alive. I wouldn't trade that experience for anything, though, because it allowed me at such a young age to question my existence." So I think that's an interesting quote, and I think he's hit the nail on the head when he says it's sick people trying to treat sick people. But what do you guys think about his current mindset?
I mean, it says he's literally living with a group of spiritual seekers in Mount Shasta, California, and I don't know where Mount Shasta is in California because I'm from Southern California. I think it's north of where I am, obviously north of Los Angeles. But it's to me, it just seems like one of those things where I'm glad he's out of it, right? But to me, he just traded like one hokum for a different type of hokum. You know what I mean? Like, if he sounds like one of those guys that the with the drugs, with the what's it called, psychotropic drugs. What is that, like acid and peyote and that kind of stuff, and because it expands your mind, man, and your consciousness and all that shit. And I've been around those types of people, and it's very much a different type of hokum, but or woo woo, however you want to word it. But I gotta say, if I had the choice between the two, I'm definitely going the drug route. But
well, so did he.
I mean, not that if I had a choice, and there was only two. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, I would agree. I think he's, on the one hand, it's nice that he's out of, one kind of religion, but he's, like, I just agree with what Heathen said. He's just kind of traded one set of woo for another set of woo. And the sad thing is that, even though he's maybe not part of a movement that is doing harm and damage to society because they're trying to impose rules, or law and put in place laws that restrict other people's liberties and things. He's doing harm to himself, and killing brain cells and things. And I just,
right. Well,
there's a better way.
Well, what's funny is it's like Eastern mysticism, quantum mechanics, and psychotropic drugs. And when you read those three things together, it looks like a really easy SAT question. You're like, which one of these does not belong?
Right.
So, go ahead.
Oh no, what I was going to say which was kind of along the lines of what Gabagai said, was I've been around people that are into the mysticism stuff, and at least I can say that they're very pro peace, and they're very pro integration, and they're very pro everyone coming together in harmony. That's kind of their thing.
Right.
Whereas in the Jesus camp, it's like, you're a soldier of God, and they're talking about, well, the Muslim kids are armed with grenades, and we gotta, I mean, they have their kids in fucking fatigues, for crying out loud. So
yeah, camouflage paint
right
on their faces, and
so I mostly agree with you guys as far as that, but I will say I think there's a slightly brighter silver lining to this, to his current situation, in that I think the most difficult thing is getting out of that first thing that you get indoctrinated into. So I think that he got past that hurdle, and now he's in a different situation. But I think that at least opens the door that I think he's more likely to find a reasonable, rational place in life than somebody who just gets locked in right from the get-go. But I could be wrong about that.
To me, so until he has kind of landed in kind of rational skepticism, he's just as vulnerable to believe the other woo again. If he ends up in an emotionally weak state, and the drugs are preventing him from gainful employment, he ends up out on the street homeless or something, and whatever, and then some church comes along and picks him up and says, hey, we've got the answer for you, you just strayed away. To toot my own horn, there was a guy, like a homeless guy in a wheelchair, who was stuck in a rut between the transition from a parking lot that was coming down to the road and where the road began, and his wheelchair was stuck there, and he was sticking out into traffic on a busy highway. I pulled off and went over and helped him out of the rut, and got him some food and stuff, and had a chance to talk to him a little bit. And this guy, he was paralyzed and having to live in the bushes and stuff. He was all about Jesus and whatever, and it made me so sad. And he was blessing me over and over again and whatever. But if this Andrew guy finds himself in the same position, that can be something that he could at least theoretically return to, if he's not doesn't find some kind of rational skeptical influence.
I can tell you that I've been around, I shit you not, and you guys probably have the same experience, and probably people that are listening have a similar experience, but I know people, and I think I mentioned this in the past also, that their indoctrination runs so deep that even though they're in a field that deals with the scientific method and facts, they can't get over the idea that there's not something out there. Out where, I have no idea, but and they never quite explain where there is or what it is, but just this idea. So even if they're not a Christian per se, this idea that they have to believe in something else. There's something spiritual or supernatural or something. And it's a weird thing, that mindset. They can't get away from it. It makes them uncomfortable. There's way too much cognitive dissonance for them to consider a reality without something magical in it.
Yeah, and I think Gavagai and I have a nephew who's kind of in a similar situation where he got away from the church, but he's into kind of some woo or proto woo or something.
Yeah.
But
well, so let's on the flip side of this kid, right? I think that if I was to take a guess, I think his dad coming out as gay would have probably been the catalyst that kind of shifted everything, because
Sure.
that's a huge one. And
yeah, but also like you get in the documentary too, like that moment where he is the only one in that camp who has the balls to say that he has doubts, and I think that is a significant moment in of his personality.
Now, if you're wondering how early this stuff comes into play,
oh. Yeah, we're not getting any audio, but yeah. You're muted.
It's muted, and all I'm seeing right now is Gavagai's profile anyway. It's not showing up.
Well.
Did we lose Heathen?
So, but it starts early.
Yes. I'm gonna read this other part from the article here, which still deals with Andrew's summer camp, and it's talking about I think her name is Becky Fisher, who was the coordinator or the youth pastor at their or children's pastor at the church, and said by the end of the conversation, summer camp said he didn't think he was abused. He was extremely critical of evangelicals, at one point calling Becky Fisher, quote, a terrible fucking person who is fueled by the spiritual suffering of other people, end quote. But he said he had chosen to have love for her and was even grateful for the experience of Jesus Camp. And I think that's an interesting question maybe we should get into in a little bit about whether or not this kind of thing is child abuse. But let's talk about the other person from this article, the other kid whose name is Levi O'Brien, who you might remember if you've seen the film as the rat tail boy. Super into this whole thing. And talking with him now in 2016, he says that people are often shocked that he's turned out to be a happy, healthy young man who wasn't traumatized by his experiences at Jesus Camp. He says, I've been asked the same question hundreds of times by people from all over the world. Do you believe you are the way you are because of how you were raised? And then he responds, isn't everybody? And let's look at the outcome. I have peace in mind. I have drive and purpose and character. So he is, I believe I didn't write it down here, but I believe he's either working with or has started a ministry of his own. And he's still fully, and this is not too surprising, but fully embedded himself into this to the I assuming he's still evangelical. I don't recall if it mentioned that or not, but he's still fully invested into this lifestyle. And I from that quote, one thing I want to maybe discuss briefly is he says, "I have peace of mind, I have drive and purpose and character." And I think that's probably true. I think it's interesting, that whole peace of mind part of that quote, I think, is an interesting thing to look at, because as I've talked about in the past, and Gavagai even was just talking about with this homeless guy, it's an interesting dynamic with Christians and their sense of peace, because on the one hand, I think they do have peace, but I think part of it, especially for kind of like middle income white Christians, a lot of their peace comes from their ability to ignore the problems in the world. I think they have peace of mind because they're able to just say, well, this is, God's will, and I have my comfortable living, and that's part of God's will, and people who don't are just living outside of God's will, and I think that probably does bring them peace. But at the same time, there's a lot of distress, I think, for Christians, especially when it comes to guilt, and when they do have problems, or they're praying to Jesus about some sort of issue, and the issue is not getting resolved. I think that causes a lot of stress that they do not include in their equation about what kind of peace they have in their lives. You guys have any thoughts? Or
Well, so I would characterize, at least from when I was a Christian, the way they interpret the world and have peace or whatever, because there are a lot of times when or let me say it this way: if I was a Christian, and heard you say that things are okay because you're in the will of God or whatever, and people who are in bad situations are outside of the will of God, Heathen's mic is down. Hopefully he gets that back up. But until then, I guess it's the Super Atheist Bros show. But I would have said, well, the Bible says that trials and tribulations will come, but even in the midst of the storm, that you can know that Jesus is there and with you, and blah, blah, blah. So, they would say that, you can expect things to be bad. And, I mean, apart from, I guess, there's the prosperity gospel people who kind of throw out some of those portions of the Bible, but they would say, well, yeah, there's bad stuff is going to happen to Christians, and
but don't you? I don't think that really contradicts what I'm saying, though.
No, not necessarily,
because I mean, to me, just like in our current society right now, I feel like that there's a very lackadaisical attitude. For instance, with Black Lives Matter situation right now, and I think a lot of Christians, particularly white Christians, they're very comfortable ignoring problems in our society, and they're quick to blame the victims, or quick to dismiss that there are actually problems in systemic problems in our society, and I think a lot of that has to do with kind of just the mindset of Christianity. Because I think, like, if Christianity works, if you're on on the top of the mountain, and it works on if you're at the bottom of the mountain. And the way it works, if you're on the top of the mountain, you've got things going well in your life, is that those things are going well because you're a Christian, and because that's what God wants to have happen in your life, and because you must be doing things that God wants. And so it creates this kind of mindset of justification. Well, if you other person, stranger, are not experiencing that situation, it's because of something you're doing or society is doing that's wrong. You're living in squalor because the Supreme Court allowed gay marriage. Kind of a mindset, but
yeah, but and I think they will tend to the fact that they would say,
hello,
hey, there you are.
hey.
They would say, well, God's in control no matter what happens. So that's just kind of their, no matter what happens, it's okay, and I can trust Jesus.
Right.
So,
and I think that's a big part of the problem.
Right.
Is that the problems in society really aren't problems because God is either going to take care of them or God's cool with them, and therefore I am cool with them.
In case anybody's wondering what Levi looks like now, here he is.
He's a handsome young fella. Got rid of the rat tail.
Yeah,
now, I'm from the West Coast, and I'm not. It would behoove me to slander somebody, but those eyebrows are way too pleased for a heterosexual man. Now, he would look. My gaydar went off immediately when I saw this picture, but not so much than in this picture. Because can you see two people with any less physical attraction to each other? Because it instantly reminded me of this picture. It's like,
I could see that.
It's like people with the least amount of chemistry. So I just thought that was funny. Sorry, go ahead.
No, well, we were I don't know how much of what we were talking about you heard, but we were talking about his quote where he talks about having peace of mind or whatever in his and but yeah. So
to me, I think one of the biggest issues that comes into play is with regard to environmental concerns like global warming or back in the 80s and 90s, the ozone layer and those kinds of things. Well, we don't have to worry about it. Jesus is coming back, and we can't do any permanent damage to the earth. That's he's going to destroy it by fire anyhow. And
right.
Yes and no, because obviously that is a clear problem when people don't take that kind of thing seriously. But I think it's also a problem with things like income inequality and social justice and those types of things when you just sit back and say, well, there isn't a problem. This isn't a problem.
Well, I looked up a couple of things, and there's actually a video on YouTube of somebody interviewing this Levi kid, probably from a few years ago, where he says, I'm more in love with Jesus than I ever was before, and he goes through this kind of speech about, they're sitting on the couch and they're talking, and he's like, I'm more involved with the church than ever, and Jesus and Jesus, and Jesus, and it's always scary for me to, I don't know, I get it gives me the skeeves when I hear people talk like that.
Yeah, but I think, and I'm not saying, I'm sure he is involved with the church and whatever, but I think some of that is show, like him just saying, "Oh, I'm even more Christian-y than I was before."
And I'm sorry.
Trying to convince himself almost.
Yeah. I'm like I said, I'm sure he is still involved with the church and he still believes all that stuff. But
I mean,
when he got put a camera in front of him and he's basically trying to justify himself, and it's even better than it was before.
it's like when we did the Scientology thing and like the ex-wives or whatever come on, like it's not like that at all. Everything is great, but
I know every inch of his body. I know every inch of Jesus' body.
Right. I mean, he's about to go into a fake marriage. I mean, a real marriage, and I'm just saying it wouldn't surprise me if the dude likes other dudes. That's all I'm saying. Those are some pretty eyebrows. That's all I'm getting at. But since the documentary, the camp has actually been closed down. Because they got in such a...
Was the camp closed down, or just... I thought it was just that their church wasn't allowed back to that.
Well, no, I read in an article that they don't know... They closed it, and they haven't allowed any other ministries to rent out that area in fear of, like, vandalism or that kind of thing.
Yeah. So, well, that is unfortunate. Like, I don't advocate anybody going and doing anything to people like this. I mean, that all that does when you do that is fuel their persecution complex. So don't do that. Criticize them, point out what they're doing is dumb and wrong and not good, but don't physically harm them or threaten them or do property damage or anything like that.
Yeah.
And I got a quote here from the article again from Heidi Ewing, who was one of the co-directors of the film. And she says that she disagreed with the teachings of the camp, but didn't feel the camp leaders were abusive. She says they're not doing anything illegal, and if you want to raise your children as liberal progressives to be amped up about the environment and being pro-choice, you can do that. Some of the arguments against the film were so knee-jerk it made me realize the far left and far right have a lot in common.
Well, I mean, but you never see crazy hippie vegans, like, blowing each other up. You know what I mean? Like,
well, you don't really see Christians blowing each other up either.
No, well, they'll shoot up abortion clinics, though. Not all of them. I'm not saying all of them, but I'm saying, I get what she's saying, right? I totally do, but to say that they're, opposite sides of the same coin kind of thing is, I think, a little bit of a stretch, honestly, because most people that I've ran across, I mean, I would say all people that I ran across that are from the, tend to, like I said, they tend to have a strong integration and sort of like world peace kind of mindset. I don't know.
Well, I think you're mostly right in that it's not equivalent, but I think the reason it's not equivalent is just because there is within Christianity, and especially this kind of emotional, guilt-driven type of Christianity, like it's not like you can teach your kids that Australia doesn't exist or whatever, but it's a different thing when you teach them that Australia doesn't exist, and if they believe that Australia exists, they're going to suffer some eternal torment. When you add that extra layer of a gun, that's there's a sniper somewhere, it's looking at you, and if you don't do the right thing, you're gonna get offed.
Yeah.
When you add that extra element to it, like that makes it different than just saying, oh, the environment. Teaching your kids that the environment is super important, and I get that it's maybe not that easy to see the difference there, but it's a very important difference.
Is she comparing the people at Jesus Camp to like the weird, like rugged-looking, like feminazis that go topless and like hold hands and don't let cars pass on a freeway? Like,
no, I think she was talking about because she specifically says the knee-jerk reaction, and I think there probably there is like there is a bit of when you see that documentary, like I feel like it's easy to just lump these people in with insane people and well, and to get paranoid about and to be fair, the documentary does put like right in the front you have kind of that militaristic like little dance number they're doing, and they have her saying, this means war and that kind of stuff. And to be fair, I think she's speaking metaphorically, when she's talking about this means war. Although, and I'm talking about Becky, the children's pastor here. She does talk about Muslim children with hand grenades and stuff like that. So it's confusing what exactly she does mean.
Yeah, but if you took Becky, right, hypothetically, and you threw down 10 shots of tequila down her mouth or filled her up with truth serum, or however you want to put it, don't you think on some level she would be like, we got to prepare these Christian kids for the war? You know what I mean? Like, don't you think she would turn a little Trumpish?
Well, I wouldn't compare I wouldn't compare anybody to Trump.
Well, no, I'm saying
because I don't think Trump means anything he says, and I think
in just that sense where it's like we got to rally our troops because they're rallying their troops, like an us and them kind of mentality.
Yeah, but I still think it's 99% metaphorical. We got to rally our troops. We got to get people to believe in this bullshit. Is what she's talking about. Like, we got to get she wants her kids to take it seriously, which should be very clear to anybody who's seen the documentary. She wants them to take it seriously, but I don't, and I think if it came to it, like, she would say that yes, taking up arms is something that we'd have to do, but I don't think she's advocating kids go out and strap bombs to their backs.
No, I'm not saying that, but I'm saying when you have somebody that has that much influence on kids and talks about it, that to me has like an us and them mentality. She may not be telling them, hey, go out and get guns or strap bombs to yourself, but at some point these kids are going to get older and they're going to have that mindset.
And I think that is unhealthy. And
then, right, well, that leads into why we have these people that are, for all intents and purposes, supporting Trump in a lot of ways. You know what I mean? It's creating
Trump is not exclusively Becky, whatever her name, Fisher's fault.
I'm not saying that, but it's creating a generation of kids that are, phobic of like other people, in a sense.
Sure, but that's the interesting thing to me about Trump. Are you playing something there? Or I'm picking up.
No, it was. I accidentally hit my own our link on my cell phone, and it started playing us. So you heard you saying, hearing me, hearing you, hearing me. But go ahead.
Okay. Now what the hell was I? Play it back. I got to remember what I was saying. But Trump is interesting just because he seems antithetical to so much of what the evangelical Christian people would want, and I think that's a big part of why you have so many disgruntled evangelical Christians at this point. But so I don't know how much. I mean, I agree with you to some extent that the us versus them mentality definitely is something that Trump has fed off of, but so much of what he is and is about is antithetical to evangelical Christians. I think that I don't know how much that plays into it for the evangelicals.
I would be surprised if that lady told the students or whatever, the kids at the Jesus camp, to turn the other cheek and love your neighbor. I mean, I'm sure she said that.
I think she would.
I think she said it to other Christians and maybe other people here, but if a Muslim dude walked past by, I doubt she would say that. That's just my guess. That's the feeling that I get. I don't find her to be a particularly loving person. And maybe I'm just reading her wrong, but
I don't know. I don't think she thinks she'll ever run into a Muslim person. I don't know.
Where's the camp anyway? What state is it in?
I don't remember.
I
It's
tried
been
to
a
look
very
it
long
up.
time.
Lee's Summit, Missouri.
Nah.
So
Well,
a suburb of Kansas City. Yeah.
That sounds about right.
I don't know
I could've
if that's where the camp is.
I would have guessed Arkansas.
So
Uh,
kind of going off of that last quote, and I've actually just been re-listening to the audiobook The God Delusion by Richard Dawkins, and I'm just happened to be getting into the part where he's talking about when adults label children as being part of a religion. So you say this Christian child or this Muslim child, and he talks about that being child abuse. And then here we're talking about this type of camp and question of whether or not it's child abuse. I'm curious what you think, Heathen, about
It being
something
child
like
abuse?
about this type of camp being child abuse.
It's very important that people don't use the terms child abuse and throw it around fancifully, right? Because it's a very, it's a very touchy subject, I hear. So, but for someone like Dawkins or, Harris or any one of these guys that are professors, right? And they consider themselves educators, and you hear Dawkins say that on many videos. I'm an educator, I'm a scientist, or this and that. So for him to teach things that are the antithesis to what he would consider knowledge and all that, to him it would be child abuse. I would imagine he would certainly have that opinion. Now, for me personally, is it child abuse? Given the level of severity, I think it could be. I believe that it does stunt the developmental growth in a way, socially, but I don't know if it's enough to like I said, I got people that can't get away from believing in magic stuffs in their adulthood. That's not a good thing, and they're essentially hamstringing, to me personally, the development of their child. But is it child abuse? I don't know if I would call it child abuse. Now, if they lived in a cabin in the woods, teaching this stuff, I would probably call that child abuse. You know what I mean? Like, it's just...
That's an
it's a
interesting
fine line.
question, though, but does that really matter, though? I mean, to me, it shouldn't.
What should what matter?
Like, if it's happening, like, if you have, like you said, in a cabin in the woods, and it's... I don't know what scenario exactly you were thinking of, but if it's happening, like this is a Sam Harris thing, I believe, where he's talking about like where if one person gets mutilated or something like that, we call it abuse. But if millions of people get mutilated, we call it circumcision, or it's an acceptable practice because a lot of people do it. But if it was just one person who was suffering through this, then we would all recognize it as abuse.
Well, no, what I'm saying, my point was that it's all about, and I get it. This is obviously subjective, but if you're taking a child whose mind is developing over, as they get older and stuff, and you're hamstringing their social development in a way where they cannot be productive members of our society, then that is, in a sense, abuse mentally.
Do you think intent matters here? Do you think
No.
so like it was Andrew Summercamp had said something like they have the best of intentions, and you don't think that matters, that they have good intentions?
No, because there are a lot of fucked up people that that had good intentions, or they felt they had good intentions. But in the moral landscape, I mean, that, not to quote a book, but that is our current makeup here in America, where people are people frown upon segregation and integration as a thing and moving forward as a society and stuff. And if that's the way things are going to be a productive member of society, and you're teaching them the antithesis of that, that can be viewed as child abuse. That's all that I'm saying. And
What do
whether
you
they have
think?
good intentions or not, you know what I mean?
What do you think, Gabby?
Yeah, I don't like the use of that word in this regard. I mean, people are going to teach their kids. Now, it's unfortunately. Do I think it's? I think it's probably unhealthy, but I don't think that it's unhealthy. Like putting them on these guilt trips and things, and doing the manipulation that they go through in these kinds of Bible camps, and they did that for us too. But I think that I wouldn't classify it as abuse, because I think that word needs to be reserved for their very clear cut, damaging and harmful, and I don't think that this qualifies to have that word used.
Well, what about those rare
And
occasions?
I think it waters down the importance of the word.
Yeah, me too. But there are those rare occasions where people, go into a weird depression and stuff because their parents were super religious and strict, and now they have all these self-worth and self-esteem issues and shit like that. I mean, what about when it gets to that extreme?
See, I think if I can jump in here, I think intent does matter. And I don't know if I would use the word child abuse or not, but I like if you know that you're teaching, and that's important here, is that these people don't know that they're teaching their kids the wrong thing. But if you could prove that somebody knew they were misinforming their children on purpose, like wouldn't you view that as being worse than somebody who thinks they're doing the right thing but is ultimately doing the wrong thing?
Well, I don't. Yeah, I don't disagree with you. I guess what I'm saying is it's a matter of the subject and how extreme the teaching is. Because you can teach them something like with good intent, and and have it not impact the kid to where they're a damaged adult. That's all that's I mean that's going to be my ultimate arbiter of this is when they get to adulthood, are they going to be able to function and not hate themselves and not feel guilty constantly and not have all this sort of, you know what I mean? Like to this day, I have a shit ton of guilt for stuff that other people don't have guilt for. I feel real bad about things that I do if I make someone feel really bad in my normal life, believe it or not. And so, but that's a result of my mom being really religious. So it can affect you. I actually don't like that part of my personality. I want to be more unfeeling, but
You want to be a cold-hearted psychopath. I got it.
yeah, right, exactly.
But I mean, it's interesting too, because you have in this article, it gives us kind of two different outcomes to basically the same situation, where you have, at least on the surface level, you have one kid who grew up and seems to be fine, and he's still believing this stuff, and he's, at least according to him, at peace. It almost, so if we were going to throw out the word child abuse here, it would seem in his case it wasn't child abuse, because he didn't suffer ill effects from it, at least thus far, according to him. Whereas in the other case, this young man is in a different place in his life, and maybe he'll be fine, and maybe he's gonna end up a junkie. I don't know.
He'd have a good time though up in those mountains.
Yeah.
Well, I think we tapped this well. I don't know about you guys. Although
think
I
that's
would have
good.
liked to have seen him,
And this could be a segue.
I would have liked to have seen Levi with the rat
Go ahead.
tail or just the mullet part of his head and the super tweezed eyebrows would have been great.
Maybe in the future, maybe the 20-year reunion.
20. So moving on, I guess we're tapped. We're gonna shine the spotlight on Gavagai for a second because Gavagai has a fucked up Bible story for us.
Yay!
That was my drum roll. Yay! I gotta get sound effects. Can we download sound effects?
So, yeah, that's like a clown horn. Anyway,
Go.
if you all turn in your Bibles today,
That's your cue. That's your cue, Gavagai.
Yeah, to Exodus chapter 4. Moses is the featured character in this particular story, and we'll specifically be looking at verses 24 through 26. But to give you some context, what's happening here, Moses, at the beginning of chapter 4, is kind of mid-conversation. When they set the chapters up, they kind of did it weird. He's basically in conversation with Yahweh, and Yahweh is telling him, to go back to Egypt because he's been out in the desert in kind of exile after having killed an Egyptian. For the Egyptian had been beating one of the Hebrews that was a slave, and Moses killed the Egyptian and then fled. So he's married now. He's been living out in the desert, and that was actually going to be my segue. I was going to say is you had said something about that Andrew summer camp is going to have a lot of fun out in the mountains. I was like, speaking of someone having fun out in the mountains and burning some bush.
Nice.
Yeah, well, yeah.
No one
Anyways.
likes Bush. Nobody likes Bush, Gavagai.
Yeah. So, but anyways, Yahweh is talking with Moses. He's saying, go back to Egypt. You're going to tell the Pharaoh that he's got to let the Hebrew people go. And after this long, stupid conversation, and Yahweh teaches him how to throw his staff down on the ground and turn it into a snake. So he's going to do a magic trick to convince the Pharaoh that he's speaking for Yahweh. And so anyways, going down, I'm going to skip down to verse 18. It says, Moses went back home to Jethro, his father-in-law, who he'd been living with. He says, please let me return to my relatives in Egypt, Moses said. I don't even know if they're still alive. And Jethro says, go in peace. And Moses left Midian, that's kind of the area, the territory he was living in. And Yahweh said to him, return to Egypt, for all those who wanted you to kill you have died. So, again, it's so weird. The Bible is so mental and just so poorly written, because he's already told him the same stuff. It just repeats itself. And then, so Moses verse 20 says, Moses took his wife and sons and put them on a donkey and headed back to the land of Egypt. In his hand he carried the staff of God.
Nice.
And then verse 21, so Yahweh told Moses, when you arrive back in Egypt, go to Pharaoh and perform all the miracles I empowered you to do, but I will harden his heart, so he will refuse. Again, kind of, and we get this throughout the whole in Exodus, where Yahweh is tampering with the Pharaoh and hardening his heart and create more misery and death and things. But that's not really the section in question. So Moses is traveling, and on the way to Egypt, starting in verse 24, this is the story here. On the way to Egypt, at a place where Moses and his family had stopped for the night, Yahweh confronted him and was about to kill him. In verse 25, but Moses' wife Zipporah took a flint knife, and circumcised her son. She
What?
touched his feet with the foreskin and said, "Now you are a bridegroom of blood to me." When she said, "A bridegroom," after that, the Lord left him alone.
You were cutting out, broski.
Yeah, repeat that last
Oh, shoot.
like 2 lines.
Yeah.
You were turned
Sure,
into a
so-
robot for a second.
That's how I like it. So she says she takes the foreskin and touches it apparently to Moses' feet, and she says, "Now you are a bridegroom of blood to me." And then verse 26 it says, when she said a bridegroom of blood, she was referring to the circumcision. After that, Yahweh left him alone. And then from there, it just goes on, and they travel on. And so it's just this really weird, completely stupid interaction where suddenly Yahweh is pissed at Moses for no given reason whatsoever.
Does it say that he's pissed though? Because it just says he wants to kill him. It doesn't necessarily mean he's pissed at him.
Right. Yahweh
It
never
says
really needed a
it was
reason
the
to kill
Lord-
somebody.
Yahweh confronted him and was about to kill him. So,
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
there was a confrontation. And quick-thinking wife cuts the foreskin off of her son's penis and touches it to Moses' feet.
That is
and then
a
says some.
that is a
Go
quick
ahead.
get out of jail free card there. When you're in trouble, quick cut the foreskin off of your son's penis, and then touch
Right.
it to his feet. Is it the child's foot or Moses' foot? Who gets
Moses' foot.
Okay, well that
Yeah,
makes sense actually.
Yeah.
Now, is it better to in these modern times to not have your son circumcised just in case of any sort of deity interaction, so you can have that, you can run back and just, hey, son, I'm chopping off your foreskin right now. God is mad at me.
I'm just. How did they leave out what the confrontation was about? Like, that's how do you skip over that part? Like, they had a confrontation, and then yeah, and yada yada yada. God is gonna kill Moses, the person who is about to set his people free. That was well timed.
Nice. Oh man, I have sound effects. This is gonna be great. So yeah, that's a really weird one. I mean, you would think that they would have elaborated. Well, what the fuck am I applying logic to the Bible for? I mean, really.
Why does God need Moses to do any of that anyway? Why does God have to send Moses to tell Pharaoh? Fucking tell him yourself, you lazy asshole.
Yeah, I mean, what verse was this? Or what part of the Bible is it?
That's Exodus, right? You have a guy?
Have a guy.
Uh-oh. What are we, like a radio morning call-in show here, or what's going on here? Hello?
Have a guy. You have a guy. We're waiting on you.
Oh my God.
I'm gonna get really good at this, by the way.
You're already off to a flying start here.
I'm hoping to find something online. Exodus, Moses, foreskin. Maybe there's some sort of okay. But Deborah took a flint knife and cut off her. What is the significance of Moses' feet with?
I think Gavagai just walked out on us.
Yeah, he was like, "Fuck these sound effects." So okay, someone on this webpage put.
Is Gavagai being confronted by Yahweh? What's going on over there?
Yeah, what's going on?
Oh my God, we lost Gavagai. Just got I hope he had a foreskin ready.
I know. Chop off your own, Gabba guy, if you have it.
If you have to, you have to. But
You know
man,
what you got to do to please Yahweh. So it says on this webpage, what is the significance of touching Moses' feet with his son's foreskin in Exodus? And it says, no, it wasn't a necessary thing to do in addition to the actual circumcision because the Lord had not commanded Zipporah to do it. The actions and her words, "You, Moses, are a bridegroom of blood to me," certainly had a symbolic meaning, though that meaning, however, may or may not have been derived from an... Holy shit, who the fuck is that? Dude, Gabba Guy's got issues.
I didn't hear him.
It's me. Hello.
Hi.
He's back.
These hangouts just got a lot more fun.
It says the action in her words, "You, Moses, are bridegroom of blood to me," certainly had a symbolic meaning, though that meaning, however, may or may not have been derived from an ancient marital relationship formula recalling circumcision as a premarital rite. The Zipporah may have been, likely she was, loath to perform the surgery on her son. We do not know his age at this time, but he almost certainly was not a newborn or toddler. As a mother, Zipporah's heart would go out to her son and would quite naturally want to protect her child from unnecessary pain and suffering. She may, however, have been desperate to prevent something far worse than a circumcision. And Gabby posted something. Nah. Why don't you screen share this shit?
Yeah, I'm going to. Hang on.
I'm one step ahead of you, buddy.
All right, you got it there. Yeah,
Nice.
So the Brick Bible, which is the Lego interpretation of the Bible, they did a visualization of some of the story anyhow, and then I think if you click to the right, to the next image, yeah, there it is.
How did they even get all these little fucking pieces?
Yeah. So and some
That's a giant foreskin.
Yeah, some retailers. I don't know if it's like an actual book, the Brick Bible, but
That's great.
I saw an article somewhere that said something like some retailers had banned, or wouldn't sell versions of the Brick Bible, whatever it is, in their stores because they didn't like it. But all they're doing is putting out there what the text actually says.
Right.
Well, I don't care for that.
I don't care for that. Oh man. Yeah, it's weird. Like, and that's from a page called Hermeneutics, whatever, something or other.
Yeah.
And it's gotten to a point where they just go, you know what? We literally, this is way too much bullshit. Like, we don't even know. Because I mean, the kid. They said to the kids, most certainly not a toddler or baby. So, what did the son do? Like, did he have some sort of reaction or?
What happens to those people too? Like, I didn't remember that Moses had a wife. Like,
Yeah.
where does she end up in this whole story?
She's I don't know. Yeah, that's the only reference I remember ever even talking about her, really.
Well, it says on this hermeneutics thing, it says, much like Jacob in Genesis, who had confrontation with Yahweh the night before he was to join his family, whom he had sent on before him in their journey back to Seir, in Edom, to meet with his estranged brother Esau. Moses had a confrontation with the Lord which frightened both him and his wife, whereas God merely wrestled with Jacob. God was literally going to put Moses to death. The reason, disobedience for not circumcising his son earlier, 8 days after his birth. Clearly God took the right very seriously, since in Genesis God had told Abraham, any uncircumcised male who has not been circumcised in the flesh will be cut from his people. He has broken my covenant. So apparently, dick skin is very important to God.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Got to collect them all.
If there was a culture where they cut off people's earlobes, people would be like, "Oh, that's terrible. That's mean," or "That's just dumb. What kind of a stupid ritual is that?" But dick skin.
Dick skin makes a lot of sense.
If anyone watches this broadcast, the one thing we want you to take from this is the word dick skin.
The other thing that I was thinking about this, and I was kind of watching just to kill time while I was eating breakfast this morning. I was watching some of Lost, the old show from 10 years ago or whatever it was now.
Yeah.
But they the episode that I saw was when John Locke, is demanding that he be taken to meet Jacob, who and whatever. And so they go to the cabin, and Locke is very skeptical there, but the whole exchange between him and Ben in that just really brought to mind these exchanges between Moses and Yahweh, and like, why did anybody believe that Moses had encountered Yahweh, or for that matter, any of the quote unquote prophets in the Old Testament later? Did the room shake? At least in Locke's case, some stuff happened. And there might have been other explanations for it, and you can say, well, this is going down. There's some things that are odd for sure, and I don't necessarily have a ready explanation for what I just observed and experienced. But in the Old Testament, what was there that convinced people that any of these guys were hearing from a god? And he's, Ben is saying, well, you don't go and talk to Jacob. Jacob summons you, and he doesn't talk to anybody. And then when Locke is brought into the room, there's Ben is sitting there talking to an empty chair, and it's similar to the Clint Eastwood thing at the Republican convention last go around. But just why these people didn't question or didn't think about it.
Well, the funny thing to me is, in certain situations, they absolutely shouldn't question, and they do. Like, for instance, sticking with Moses here. So Moses gets the people out of Egypt, and there's all these terrible plagues which were given credit to Yahweh for. These are from Yahweh, and then they get to the Red Sea, and the Red Sea parts, which is fucking amazing. That that should convince absolutely everybody that there's something serious going on here. And then they get to Mount Sinai, and Moses is gone for a couple of days, and they're like, "Ah, fuck it, let's just make a golden calf."
I like how we're baffled by the fucking absurdity that that's in the Bible.
Well, if you read it, there are some absurd things in there.
There's a couple. There's a few.
There's one or two absurd things.
So I think as a poor segue, the last thing regarding meeting people.
What?
All of us sort of punked out. I don't think Turtle watched.
I didn't even know that was a thing. I didn't know I didn't know we were gonna watch it, but coincidentally I ended up watching the Atheist Watch. What was it? Christian Mingle. So I actually do have some reference for the
Bible
this
Reloaded
film.
guys did it.
Yes, and that was complete coincidence. I didn't realize we were going to be talking about this. So
I couldn't get past literally 14 fucking minutes. I made it to the goddamn 14-minute mark, and I was out. And it wasn't so much. It could have been any topic, really. I mean, first of all, does anybody really believe that Lacey Chabert can't find a boyfriend? You know what I mean? Like, here's an attractive young woman who can't find a boyfriend. Are you joking me at this point in time? Which is already unbelievable. But everything is wrong in this movie. The acting is bad, right?
You didn't see the whole thing. You don't know. Maybe it all comes around in the end.
I know the acting is bad. At least in the first 14 minutes.
It turns out that's just part of a ploy that later on gets revealed that they were all just supposed to be bad actors.
The thing that irritated me the most was that whimsical music, that hapless whimsical music in between scenes where she's walking around, that You know, like that. Like that. You know what I'm talking about? Like it's
Yeah.
like that hapless rom-com like transition music.
Well, maybe we should have Gavagai kind of explain what we're talking about first.
I'm sorry, I'm going
what the
berserk.
movie
It
is.
was so bad. Gavaga, since you're the only one that was able to sit through
As the sole panel member who has actually suffered through this film. Well, so it's basically like a 2-hour infomercial about Christian Mingle and put into a narrative, or I don't know. It's really bad. But it's all about this girl who goes on Christian Mingle, and she's not a devout believer herself, but is desperate to find a nice guy, and so she kind of fakes some information to suggest that she's more devout in her religious belief than she is, and she's a believer. She's just not, into it. She doesn't read her Bible. She doesn't go to church, and doesn't really know anything about like the doctrine or theology or whatever. So,
but she believes in God and Jesus and whatnot, though.
Yeah, and so she's kind of a cultural Christian more than anything else. But she gets linked up with this guy who's definitely very evangelical Christian and very devout in his faith with his family, and they're almost like a parody or just a weird what's the word? It's their stereotypical evangelical Christian family, and they went out to eat at this restaurant. I asked as if you guys know. They went out to eat at a restaurant after church called Steak and Cake.
I did see that in the video I watched. Yeah,
Which
literally has steak and cake.
Yeah, and served at the same time with nothing else. So grab yourself a slice of cake and a chunk of steak. So, but anyways, and so there's it finally kind of gets revealed as they're in Mexico, and I guess full spoilers here.
Oh boy!
For anybody that was going to rush out, and
you're gonna have to step away, heathen. Because I know you're gonna finish this.
So they end up going to Mexico together on a quasi mission trip. The families, it's their own endeavor. They own like a construction company or whatever, and they're going to Mexico where this town was had damage because of like a hurricane or something, and the bell from the church fell out of the bell tower for the church, and so they're going to hang that bell. I mean, that was like the big focus of their whole mission trip, so they can restore the faith of the people because the people's faith had been shaken. And so, but it's her kind of lackadaisical and ignorance of the Bible and things was put on full display when she was asked to answer a question from one of the local children, the Mexican children that were there, and she had no clue how to answer the question, and then somebody like that was cleaning her dorm room where they were staying came across a Christianity for Dummies book, and so the guy was like devastated and like rejects her, and then he gets together with the girl that his mom was pushing on him the whole time, who was a church member and kind of a bitchy, snotty, holier than thou kind of person, which was also descriptive of his mother and most of the other people from the church. So it was like a really bad portrayal of a Christian family, because they were all kind of just indifferent and superficial and judgmental and things.
Yeah,
And
just to jump in here real quick,
yeah.
I want to point out that I know it's a movie and so it's not real, but I do think it's kind of funny that you have this super Christian guy who can't tell the difference between somebody who actually knows like Christianity and is a true Christian, I say with scare quotes, and somebody who's just completely faking it. Like it takes like the discovery of the Christianity for Dummies book before he figures out. Like I said, I know it's a movie and he's not a real person, but come on, that's probably true in real life.
He's
too.
not even a believer as a real character.
Well, and just her personality in this film, even she's not the brightest bulb in the thing. Oh, and I also found it interesting that she's supposedly her career is a brand manager, and they talk it up as if that like job description or whatever is about lying, and so she's kind of put into some moral quandaries because she's being tasked with being the brand manager for this supposedly kind of miracle cure for baldness or something, and she's uncomfortable with it because she doesn't believe in the product. But whatever. But that's not what a brand manager does. A good brand manager wouldn't want to do that. That's not what they're all about.
It's not just straight up lying.
No, believe it or not.
Huh.
So anyhow, that's besides the point. But so anyhow, back to the narrative. So they break up because he can't deal with her, and he gets together with this fake girl who's a real Christian. And then like a year later, the girl decides. Well, I guess it was less than a year later, but so in the interim, the main character girl decides that she's gonna go full in for Christianity, even if it means that she can't be together. If it has nothing to do with the guy, because she wants to know Jesus, and then. She ends up kind of working down in that Mexican town as a teacher, and then the guy shows up like a year later or whatever, and he's like, oh, I love you, and they're happily ever after kind of thing.
That sounds realistic.
Right? Yeah.
So Christian Mingle works is kind of the moral of the story.
Yeah. Yeah, and they talk about it throughout the whole thing.
A lot of product placement, just in the little bit that I saw.
Yeah.
And they use like real commercials, you know what I mean, from like I see on TV, you know what I mean?
Right.
It's really odd, but yeah, it's a big product placement. But it's so bad, like it's so absurd. Like I know it's a movie, but if you're gonna go that absurd with it, just go all the way, because it's literally, oh god. It's so fake. Like,
is it like basically like
my mind is blown right now. Like when they were in the coffee house, right? And I was talking about this before the show started, and the guy's like, "Well, I like a girl, she likes coffee and loves the Lord, blah blah blah, whatever." And he brings back the coffee, and then she says grace over the coffee, and it's all awkward and weird. And that's supposed to be kind of like a cutesy, like oh ha ha kind of moment, like a hee hee, but. How are you, if you're that stupid, that you know what I mean, that you would think that any Christian would pray over a cup of coffee? It's like...
I don't know.
Yeah, but even if I had very little...
I've met my father-in-law.
But she's a believer, though. Even though she's not a practicing Christian, I've never seen that happen. That wouldn't be someone's first inclination. It's like saying... Imagine if it was a different, like minority or something. You know what I mean? Like, you wouldn't necessarily go, you take. I don't know. It's fucking retarded. That's all I gotta say.
My big issue was that, if you're going to portray a Christian family in a Christian film, they should at least be people that you would think, oh, these are people I like. These are people who, I would want to hang around and be around and whatever. And they were totally not that at all. They were like repulsive.
That's pretty accurate.
That's refreshing then,
That's
actually.
the part must be the part that's accurate.
But and then the knock knock joke I mentioned at the very beginning of the show, which was
What's the knock
my
knock
favorite
joke?
my favorite cheesy part of the film. She comes to kind of visit the guy after they've broken up, but before she goes to Mexico, at the church, and she says knock knock, and he says who's there, and she says heaven, and he says heaven who, and she says heaven you miss me. Yeah. Well done. So anyways.
So this is basically a Christian rom-com.
Yeah. Yes, exactly. That's exactly what it is.
Minus the com.
Yeah.
And essentially the ROM. Like the characters were so over the top goofy that, you understand that when you watch a rom-com, you understand that there's an element of,
Cool.
like, yeah, it's fluffy, and it's kind of like they're all kind of the same sort of thing where the two people shouldn't be together, but they like each other, but then they get together, then something happens, and one discovers something about the other, they break up, and in the end they get back together again, blah 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 blah. Essentially it's always the same shit. But these characters were the dialogue was so bad that it looked like it was a dialogue that a high school kid would write for a play, like a high school play. It's just really bad. Like 14 minutes. Normally, I watched fucking Nick Cage in the goddamn fucking Fallen Left Behind or whatever. Yeah. I could deal with that, but this movie was just bad. Like
I didn't see this movie, but I feel like all Christian movies take place in an alternate universe where people
bad filmmaking.
Well, people like they don't behave like normal human beings in Christian movies. Like every Christian movie is written by an alien who has like seen Earthlings behaving and kind of just trying to figure it out, and so they don't quite get how people actually interact with each other, but they kind of have the gist of it, Like that's how Christian movies get written, I think.
Well, it's like what's the God's Not Dead 2, like the lawyer, the atheist lawyer in there.
I want to.
That was just so over the top and bizarre. It's
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. It's just human beings don't behave the way that humans behave in Christian movies.
Right.
They're just weird non-motivations and
the circumstances aren't real. Like you don't well, I guess I was going to say that when they pray for the girl that has cancer, people get healed of cancer. They also get treated for cancer, and cancer goes through natural remissions and things. But there are some things where they pray and something that's actually miraculous or happens or whatever. That stuff doesn't happen. And if it did, probably more people would be Christians or more people would be persuaded. But it's
right. It's kind of like in God's Not Dead 2, like where the judge is like, doesn't he say like, if you can prove to me that God exists, like I'll find you not guilty or some shit, like, you know what I mean? Or at the end of God's Not Dead, the first one, when Kevin Sorbo gets hit by the car.
Spoilers!
Those guys are like praying over him, and he's like, do you believe in God now? And he's like, accept Jesus in your heart. And I'd be like, call an ambulance, asshole. Like, like what are you talking about?
No, it's too late. It's too late. He like felt his like liver or whatever, and he's like, nah, he's gone.
Oh, that's right. Like, oh, that movie is so horrible. Do those movies make money?
Yes, they have. They don't make sequels unless the first one makes money. So. Did you ask that specifically because you had a dollar noise
cash
at the ready?
Maybe.
Maybe.
Google only gives me 12 sound effects, so unless I can download more,
Gotta
we're hearing
set
a lot
'em
of
up.
those. I gotta set them up. I'm gonna be like, hey, tell me a knock-knock joke. Awesome. Well, anyway, I'm pretty tapped. This is a pretty short show, but I gotta say I'm horribly hungry at this point. So, what do you got? What else? What else do you guys got going on?
I got episode of Heretical Weekends coming up in 2 weeks. Check it out.
Nice. I'm gonna try to actually bait this Moses Prey guy that I was talking about at the beginning of the show into a hangout, just because I'm kind of curious on how crazy he actually is. But I think he's just an online troll at this point. Gabby, what about you? Any offline hangouts you don't want us to see?
Yeah. So watch out for those.
We will. Well, I guess that's the show. Thank everybody for stopping by. Comment and like and share and all that good shit. And we'll see you all in 2 weeks.
Challenge you to a debate.